The conference chamber aboard the Galactic Council station was massive and filled with beings from 27 different worlds. The room sparkled with technology that humans could only dream of building just a few decades ago. Giant windows showed the swirling colors of a distant nebula, and at the center sat a circular table where representatives from across the galaxy gathered to discuss important matters. At the smallest seat near the back entrance sat Ambassador Lisa Grant from Earth. She kept her smile steady even though her jaw hurt from maintaining it for so long. Council Speaker Votharan was reviewing the day's agenda, and when he reached Earth's proposal for expanded trade routes, he barely glanced at the document before dismissing it entirely. His four eyes looked everywhere except at Lisa as he spoke in a tone that suggested he was addressing a child rather than a qualified diplomat. "The human delegation wastes our time again," Votharan announced to the entire assembly. "Your species has been granted more than enough access to our markets already. You should be grateful for what you have been given instead of constantly asking for more." Lisa took a slow breath and maintained her pleasant expression, even though every instinct told her to stand up and walk out. She had prepared extensive economic data, showing how Earth's growing industries could benefit multiple council members through increased trade. The statistics were solid and the projections were conservative, but none of that mattered if the speaker refused to even look at them. "Speaker, if I may present the economic analysis that supports our request," Lisa said in her most professional voice. "You may not," Votharan replied without hesitation. "Now let us move on to more important matters. The Zentari mining concerns require our immediate attention." Just like that, 15 months of preparation and documentation were dismissed in less than 30 seconds. Lisa gathered her materials with practiced grace, her hands steady despite the frustration building inside her chest. She had memorized all the key points anyway, not that it mattered when no one was willing to listen. Above the main floor in the observation gallery, Captain Jake Morrison watched the exchange with his hands gripping the railing hard enough to make his knuckles turn white. The metal creaked slightly under the pressure. Beside him stood Commander Ryan Blake, who placed a calming hand on his shoulder before Jake could do something that would get them all in trouble. "Breathe, Jake," Ryan muttered quietly. "Not yet, we have our orders." 15 years, Jake whispered back through clenched teeth. 15 years of eating this garbage while smiling and nodding like everything is fine. "I know exactly how long it has been," Ryan replied. "But Command was clear about our mission here. We maintain diplomatic relations no matter how much they insult us. We smile and we wait." "Wait for what exactly?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Wait for the day when we do not have to smile anymore." Down on the main floor, Trade Minister Zekthar slithered past Lisa's chair as the session ended. His species looked like enormous serpents with multiple arms for manipulating objects, and he took obvious pleasure in reminding humans of their biological differences whenever possible. He had perfected a tone of voice that sounded polite on the surface but dripped with contempt underneath. "Ambassador Grant," he said with false warmth, "do give my regards to your quaint little planet. I hear the pollution levels are finally becoming manageable. Perhaps in another century or two, you might actually qualify for industrial zone status instead of agricultural classification." Lisa's smile could have been carved from ice, but she kept her voice steady and professional. "Thank you for your concern, Minister. Earth appreciates your interest in our environmental progress." Zekthar's laughter echoed through the chamber as he departed, and several other council members joined in the amusement. They were laughing at her. They were laughing at Earth. They were laughing at humanity's attempts to be taken seriously in galactic affairs. Later that evening aboard the human diplomatic vessel Horizon, Lisa finally allowed her carefully maintained composure to crack. She threw her datapad across her office and watched it clatter against the far wall, the screen flickering but not breaking. The device was built to withstand worse treatment than that, which was probably why Command issued them to diplomats assigned to council duty. 15 years of smiling while they spit in our faces," she said to Jake, who had joined her after the session ended. "How much longer does Earth expect us to endure this treatment before we are allowed to respond honestly?" Jake poured 2 glasses of whiskey from his personal reserve, the good stuff he saved for particularly bad days. This definitely qualified as one of those days. "As long as it takes," he said simply. The brass back home made it very clear. "We are still building our capabilities. Our fleet is not ready for a confrontation. Our industrial base is not fully developed. We need more time. Time for what? Lisa asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. For the day when we do not have to smile anymore, Jake repeated Ryan's words from earlier. For the day when we can tell the council exactly what we think of their condescending attitudes and discriminatory policies. Lisa took the offered glass and downed the whiskey in one long swallow, feeling the burn all the way down. That day cannot come soon enough for me. What neither of them knew in that moment was that 3 decks below in the science section, Dr. Helen Cruz was working late in her laboratory. She had been analyzing intercepted communications for months, trying to piece together patterns in council member activities. Most of it was routine diplomatic chatter and boring trade discussions, but one particular transmission had caught her attention weeks ago. It was encrypted with military-grade security protocols, which was unusual for a civilian government official. She had been working on breaking the encryption in her spare time, running decryption algorithms whenever her official duties allowed. Tonight, finally, the code broke. Helen stared at her screen as the contents of the message became clear. It was a communication between Trade Minister Zekthar and a known pirate organization called the Kresh Syndicate. The message contained coordinates for human colonial settlements, including detailed information about their defense capabilities, patrol schedules, and cargo shipment times. Everything a pirate group would need to successfully raid an undefended outpost. Her hands trembled as she cross-referenced the dates on the transmission with attack reports from the frontier. The Artemis colony had been hit 3 weeks ago. 47 people dead, including 16 children. The attack had seemed random at the time. Just bad luck that pirates happened to hit during a gap in patrol coverage. Except it was not random at all. The patrol gap was listed right there in Zekthar's message. Helen saved all the data to an isolated drive, made 3 backup copies, and immediately contacted Captain Morrison. This information changed everything. The council was not just dismissive and condescending. At least one of their ministers was actively helping criminals murder human colonists. When Jake and Lisa saw the evidence an hour later, the whiskey bottle came out again. They sat in Jake's office reviewing the decrypted files while Helen explained her analysis. The evidence was solid and undeniable. Zekthar had been feeding intelligence to pirates for at least 18 months, possibly longer. We take this to the council, Jake said immediately. We present the evidence and demand justice. Ryan, who had been called in to review the security implications, shook his head. With what proof that they will accept? We intercepted classified communications without authorization. They will accuse us of espionage and completely ignore the actual crime. Then what do you suggest? Jake asked. We sit here doing nothing while a council minister helps pirates kill our people. Lisa held up her hand for silence. We do both. We present the evidence to force them to respond. But we also prepare for the very likely possibility that they will do nothing. Prepare how exactly? Helen asked. The ambassador looked at each of them carefully before answering. We send all of this intelligence back to Earth Command. Every insult we have endured. Every discriminatory policy they have implemented. Every treaty violation, and we include this evidence of Zekthar's betrayal. Then we ask Command for one thing only: permission to stop being polite. Jake reached for the secure communication console, but Lisa stopped him with a hand on his arm. Captain, once we send this message, there is no going back to how things were. Earth has spent 15 years building capabilities in silence while maintaining friendly relations. If we call for action now, we might be starting a war. Then we will be starting it for the right reasons, Jake replied firmly. I am tired of watching good people die while we smile and pretend everything is acceptable. The message was compressed into a tight data burst and transmitted to Earth within the hour. It would take 3 days for the signal to reach home, and another day for Command to review everything and send a response. In the meantime, they had one more council session scheduled. One more opportunity to present their evidence and see if the council had any shred of integrity left. Lisa did not have high hopes, but she prepared her presentation anyway. This time she would not be ignored. 3 months passed since the disastrous council session where Lisa's trade proposal was dismissed without consideration. During that time, things only got worse for humanity's position in the galaxy. The Galactic Council approved a new set of tariffs that specifically targeted human exports. and the vote passed by a single vote while Ambassador Grant was conveniently delayed at a security checkpoint for 4 hours. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental, and everyone knew it. But proving deliberate obstruction was impossible. Commander Ryan Blake sat in the briefing room aboard the Horizon reviewing the latest trade reports with a growing sense of frustration. The numbers painted a grim picture of what these new tariffs would mean for Earth's outer colonies. "These restrictions will cripple our settlements on the frontier," he said to the others gathered around the table. "We have entire communities that depend on galactic trade just to survive. Without access to council markets, some of those colonies will not make it through the next year." Lisa nodded grimly as she added her own observations to the discussion. "When I filed an official protest with the council, Speaker Vothran told me that Earth should focus on achieving what he called sustainable independence rather than relying so heavily on council markets for our economic survival." Jake translated that statement into what it actually meant. In other words, stay in your corner of space and stop bothering us with requests for equal treatment. "That is exactly what he meant," Lisa confirmed. "They want us isolated and struggling, so we remain dependent on whatever scraps they choose to throw our way." The door to the briefing room opened and Dr. Helen Cruz entered with a pale face and trembling hands. The others immediately knew she had found something significant. "We have a much bigger problem than trade tariffs," she announced without preamble. "Remember that encrypted transmission I flagged last month between Minister Zekthar and the Kresh pirates? I have finished my complete analysis of all related communications." She activated the holographic display system, and a 3-dimensional map of human colonial space appeared floating above the table. Several settlements were marked in red, indicating locations that had been attacked. The pattern was obvious once you saw it laid out visually. Zekthar has been feeding detailed intelligence about our outer colonies to the Kresh pirate syndicate for at least 18 months, possibly longer. He provided exact coordinates, patrol schedules, defense capabilities, cargo manifests, and supply shipment times. Everything the pirates would need to successfully raid our settlements. The room fell into shocked silence as everyone absorbed what Helen was saying. "How long has this been going on?" Lisa finally asked in a quiet voice. "At least 18 months based on the communications I have managed to decrypt," Helen replied. "But there are older encrypted files I have not been able to break yet. This could go back years. The Kresh hit our Artemis colony last week. 47 people died, including 16 children. I cross-referenced the attack pattern and timing with the intelligence Zekthar provided. It matches perfectly down to the minute." Jake stood up slowly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "We need to present this evidence to the council immediately. They cannot ignore proof that one of their own ministers is facilitating mass murder." Ryan held up a hand to slow him down. "Present it with what credibility? We obtained this information by intercepting and decrypting classified council communications. They will accuse us of illegal espionage and use that to completely ignore the actual crime Zekthar committed." "Then what do you suggest we do?" Jake asked with barely controlled anger. "We sit here quietly while a council minister actively helps pirates murder our colonists?" Lisa raised her hand to interrupt the argument before it escalated further. "We do both approaches simultaneously. We present our evidence to the council and force them to respond officially. But we also prepare contingency plans for the extremely likely scenario, where they do nothing except protect their own." Helen looked confused. "Prepare how exactly?" The ambassador glanced at each person in the room before answering. "We send all of this intelligence back to Earth Command. Every insult we have endured over 15 years. Every discriminatory restriction they placed on us. Every treaty violation. Every betrayal. And most importantly, we send them proof that a council minister has been helping pirates kill human civilians. Then we request one specific thing from command: permission to stop being polite." Jake reached for the secure communication console, but Lisa stopped him with a serious expression. "Captain, you need to understand what we are doing here. Once we transmit this request, there is no possibility of returning to normal diplomatic relations. Earth has spent 15 years quietly building our capabilities while maintaining friendly relations with the Council. If we ask command for permission to abandon diplomatic courtesy now, we are potentially starting an interstellar war. Then we will start that war for the right reasons," Jake replied without hesitation. "I am tired of watching innocent people die while we smile and pretend everything is acceptable." The encrypted message burst was transmitted to Earth within the hour. It would take 3 days for the signal to reach home, and another full day for command to analyze everything and formulate a response. During that waiting period, they had one more council session scheduled, one final opportunity to present their evidence and see if the Galactic Council possessed any remaining integrity. The council session went exactly as Lisa predicted it would go. She stood before the assembled representatives with perfect documentation and undeniable proof of Minister Zekthar's crimes. She carefully outlined each piece of evidence showing how he provided intelligence to known criminals. She listed every human colonist who died as a direct result of his actions. She presented financial records showing payments from the creche syndicate to accounts controlled by Zekthar's family. The council's response was entirely predictable and infuriating. "These accusations are completely outrageous," Speaker Vothran declared with theatrical offense. "Minister Zekthar is a respected and long-serving member of this council. The human delegation insults us all with this obvious fabrication designed to deflect attention from their own economic failures." Lisa kept her voice calm despite the rage building inside her chest. "This is not a fabrication. We have the transmission logs. We have the decrypted communications. We have financial transaction records. And we have 47 dead colonists, including 16 children. How convenient that you possess illegally obtained intelligence data," Zekthar hissed from his position at the table. "Perhaps the real question we should be asking is why humans were conducting espionage operations against Council communications in the first place. That seems like a far more serious concern than these baseless accusations." Several council members nodded in agreement with this deflection. The vote was called and the result was unanimous. Earth's accusations were formally dismissed as unfounded and politically motivated. The human delegation received an official censure for conducting unauthorized espionage against council members. As punishment for this espionage, humanity's already limited trade access was reduced by an additional 30% effective. Immediately, Lisa gathered her materials and walked out of the chamber with her, head held high despite the humiliation. As she passed Zekthar's seat, she heard his mocking voice speaking just loud enough for her to hear clearly. "Do give my regards to those colonists, Ambassador, the ones who are still living anyway. Perhaps they will learn to appreciate the protection that proper council membership could provide." She did not turn around or acknowledge his taunt. She did not need to respond because the message from Earth Command had just arrived in her personal communication device. She felt the vibration alert and glanced down at the screen. The message contained only 2 words, but they changed everything. "Permission granted." Jake was waiting for her outside the chamber doors. He saw her expression and immediately understood. "They said yes?" Lisa nodded once. "They said yes. No more diplomatic courtesy. No more smiling while they insult us. No more pretending their behavior is acceptable. Earth Command has authorized us to respond appropriately." "What does that mean exactly?" Jake asked. "It means the Council is about to discover that humanity's politeness was never weakness," Lisa replied. "It was a strategic choice we made while we built up our capabilities. They mistook our patience for submission. That was their critical mistake." They walked back to the horizon together, and within an hour, Admiral Catherine Ross appeared on every major news network and diplomatic channel across the galaxy simultaneously. She wore her full dress uniform, and behind her stood the combined leadership of Earth's Naval Command. Her message was broadcast in 47 different languages, so no one could claim they misunderstood. The words she spoke would be analyzed and debated for years to come. But the core message was simple and direct. Humanity's diplomatic phase had concluded. Earth was withdrawing from the Galactic Council effective immediately. All treaties were void. All trade agreements were canceled. All diplomatic missions were being recalled. The Council had wanted Earth to achieve sustainable independence, and now they would see exactly what an independent humanity looked like. The transmission ended, and chaos erupted across the galaxy. Every diplomatic channel lit up with. The transition happened overnight, but the effects spread across the entire galaxy within hours. Human ships that had been docked at various stations for diplomatic purposes began their departure in perfect synchronized formation. Every vessel activated its engines at exactly the same moment, formed into standard military convoy patterns, and accelerated toward the edges of their respective systems at speeds that surprised every observer. Admiral Catherine Ross had delivered Her message, and now the galaxy watched to see what humanity would actually do. The answer came swiftly and with overwhelming force. Within 24 hours of the withdrawal announcement, human military fleets began appearing at strategic locations throughout what the Council called disputed space. These were regions that no single government controlled, border areas where pirates operated freely, and neutral zones that the Council had specifically told humanity to avoid. The message was unmistakably clear. The old rules no longer applied. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new assignment, a massive battlecruiser named Defiance. The diplomatic vessel Horizon had been designed for meetings and negotiations with comfortable quarters and extensive conference facilities. The Defiance was built for an entirely different purpose: 2 kilometers of reinforced armor plating, weapon systems that could level entire cities, and engines powerful enough to outrun almost anything in known space. This was not a ship meant for talking. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts with an urgent report. "Captain, we are receiving multiple distress signals from 3 different locations: the Vrax colony in Sector 7, the mining station at Kelos 2, and what appears to be a civilian trade convoy in the disputed fringe." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "What is the nature of these distress calls?" "All 3 report active pirate attacks in progress. Kresh raiders specifically." Commander Ryan Blake, who had transferred to the Defiance along with Jake, exchanged a meaningful look with his captain. The same Kresh pirates that Minister Zekthar was feeding intelligence to. The exact same organization, Ryan confirmed. Jake activated his command console and spoke clearly. "How very convenient for us. Helm, set an immediate course for the nearest distress signal. Weapons, bring all batteries to full charge. Communications, open a channel to all ships in our battle group." The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open, sir. This is Captain Morrison to all vessels in the fleet. We have confirmed reports of Kresh pirate activity in our operational area. These are the same pirates who murdered our colonists while the Council protected the minister who helped them. Today we demonstrate the difference between Council justice and human justice. All ships prepare for immediate combat operations. The Defiance and its accompanying battle group, consisting of 8 heavy cruisers and 12 support vessels, entered faster-than-light travel and emerged in the Kelos 2 system at maximum combat speed. What they found was a scene that had played out dozens of times across the frontier. 6 Kresh marauder ships surrounded a civilian mining station, their weapons systematically destroying the station's minimal defensive shields, while demanding cargo and threatening to execute hostages. The tactical officer provided a quick assessment. They are demanding immediate payment of all valuable cargo and threatening to start killing station personnel if their demands are not met within 10 minutes. Jake's expression showed no emotion at all. "Weapons free, no warnings. I want those pirate ships disabled or destroyed before they even know we are here." The human fleet emerged from their jump already firing. Advanced targeting computers locked onto each Kresh vessel with precision that the pirates had never encountered before. Railgun rounds moving at significant fractions of light speed tore through pirate hulls like they were constructed from thin paper. 3 ships exploded instantly in brilliant flashes of superheated gas and metal fragments. 2 more attempted to run, their engines flaring desperately as they tried to reach the minimum distance needed for a faster-than-light escape. "Pursuit course," Jake ordered calmly. "Do not let them reach jump distance." The human cruisers caught the fleeing pirates easily, their superior engines closing the gap in seconds rather than minutes. 1 pirate vessel immediately surrendered, broadcasting desperate pleas for mercy on all available frequencies. The other chose to fight and was reduced to an expanding cloud of debris within moments. "Secure the surrendered vessel," Jake commanded. "I want their entire computer system extracted intact. Let us discover what else Minister Zekthar has been involved in." Rescue operations began immediately at the mining station, while the captured pirate ship was taken into custody. Jake received an incoming transmission from Admiral Ross before the situation was even fully resolved. "Captain Morrison, your timing could not be better. We are receiving similar reports from across multiple sectors. Every system where Kresh pirates have operated is now requesting human military assistance." "The Council is not responding to these distress calls," Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "The Council is responding by informing these settlements that they should have purchased proper Council protection services. which, as you know, were deliberately priced too high for most outer colonies to afford. Jake understood the implications immediately. So the Council essentially forced these settlements to endure pirate attacks because they could not pay for protection. While Council members like Zekthar ensured those pirate attacks continued profitably, Admiral Ross confirmed, "I believe it is time we held a press conference. The galaxy needs to understand exactly what has been happening." The press conference took place 6 hours later with Dr. Helen Cruz standing before assembled media representatives from across known space. Behind her, holographic displays showed carefully organized evidence that she had spent months compiling and analyzing. For the past 18 months, we have been monitoring communications between Galactic Council Trade Minister Zekthar and the Kresh Pirate Syndicate. These intercepted messages show systematic cooperation over an extended period. Minister Zekthar provided precise target coordinates, detailed defense capabilities, patrol schedules, and cargo information. In exchange, the Kresh paid him substantial percentages of their plundered goods. She displayed financial transaction records that scrolled across the screens. These payments total over 2 billion credits. All funds were deposited into accounts controlled by Minister Zekthar and members of his immediate family. The gathered media representatives erupted with questions and demands for clarification. Helen waited patiently for silence before continuing with even more damaging information. Our analysis reveals something even worse. The Council's protection service pricing was deliberately calculated to exclude smaller colonies from affording adequate security. Those same colonies were then systematically targeted by pirates who received detailed intelligence from a sitting council minister. This was not random criminal activity. This was organized extortion with official council participation and approval. She paused to let the full weight of that accusation sink in before continuing. Over the past 3 years, 1,700 beings have died in these coordinated raids across 42 different systems. Among the dead were 47 human colonists that the Council dismissed when we presented our evidence. We now have complete documentation proving that every single one of these attacks could have been prevented if the Council had acted on intelligence they possessed. Another holographic display appeared, showing security footage from inside the Council station itself. This recording is from the Council's own internal surveillance system. It shows Speaker Vothron meeting privately with Minister Zekthar 3 days before the attack on our Artemis colony. In this conversation, Zekthar specifically mentions the upcoming raid. Speaker Vothron's exact response was to let the humans learn the cost of refusing proper protection arrangements. The silence in the press conference room was absolute. Helen delivered her final statement with cold precision. Humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council not because we are aggressive or warlike by nature. We withdrew because the Council is corrupt at its fundamental core, and we refuse to legitimize that corruption through our continued participation and acceptance. Back aboard the Defiance, Jake watched the press conference broadcast with grim satisfaction. His tactical officer interrupted with new information. "Captain, we are detecting a large fleet approaching our position. Council naval forces. 23 warships, including their flagship Hegemony's Pride." Ryan let out a low whistle. "They are sending their showpiece vessel. Someone is definitely trying to make a statement about Council authority. Then we should make absolutely certain they understand our response," Jake replied. "Recall all ships to defensive formation around the mining station, and someone wake up Ambassador Grant. If the Council wants to talk, we will talk, but we do it from a position of strength." The Council fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel with all the ceremonial pageantry they could manage. Ships arranged in perfect formation, weapons displayed prominently but not actively powered, identification signals and flags broadcasting their authority across all channels. Admiral Ross appeared on the main communication channel before the Council fleet could transmit their prepared demands. "Council fleet, this is Admiral Catherine R." The Council fleet turned and jumped back to their own territory without firing a single shot. They had arrived expecting to intimidate a minor species that had gotten too bold for its own good. Instead, they found modern warships with confident commanders who held the moral high ground and were not afraid to defend it. Fleet Commander Korvax would file a report describing the human military capabilities he witnessed, but his superiors would dismiss much of it as exaggeration born from an embarrassing retreat. That dismissal would prove to be Another critical mistake in a long series of mistakes the Council had made regarding humanity. 3 weeks after the confrontation, a summit was arranged at a neutral location called the Tertian Diplomatic Platform. The Tertians were one of the few species that had maintained genuine neutrality throughout the entire crisis, refusing to take sides even when pressured by Council leadership. Their platform was considered sacred ground where even enemies could meet without fear of treachery. Speaker Vothran arrived with a significantly reduced delegation. His usual arrogance was notably absent, replaced by what looked like genuine concern. Minister Zekthar was not present, currently being held in custody awaiting trial for crimes against sentient beings. Several other council members who had been particularly vocal in their contempt for humanity also chose to remain absent from the negotiations. Ambassador Lisa Grant led the human delegation, but the seating arrangement was dramatically different from previous meetings. She sat at the center of the circular discussion table with Captain Jake Morrison on her right and Admiral Catherine Ross on her left. The positioning sent a clear message about who held power in this negotiation. Vothran opened the discussion with something humans had rarely heard from Council leadership over the past 15 years. Ambassador Grant, the Council acknowledges that serious errors in judgment were made regarding Earth's grievances and concerns. Lisa repeated his words with obvious skepticism in her voice. Errors in judgment. Is that what we are calling systematic corruption and the deliberate facilitation of mass murder now? The speaker's translator device seemed to struggle with what might have been a sigh of resignation. We are prepared to offer substantial financial reparations to the families of those killed in the pirate attacks. We will also implement comprehensive reforms of our protection service policies and establish independent oversight committees for all Council commercial activities. Admiral Ross leaned forward slightly. That is a reasonable start, but it does not address the fundamental problem at the core of this situation. Your Council has spent decades treating newer species as second-class citizens. Earth is not the only victim of your discriminatory policies. We are simply the first ones who became strong enough to call you out on it. Another Council member spoke up, her crystalline form producing musical chiming sounds as she moved. What would you have us do? Dissolve the Council entirely and let chaos reign across the galaxy? No, Lisa said firmly. We want you to actually live up to the principles you claim to represent. Equal treatment under galactic law regardless of species age or industrial development. Fair trade practices that do not favor established members. Protection services that do not require extortion-level payments. These are not complicated concepts. Vothran's 4 eyes focused intently on Lisa. If we agree to implement these reforms, will humanity consider rejoining the Council? Lisa delivered her answer in a single word. No. The word hung in the air like a weapon. The Council representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then what exactly is the point of this negotiation? Vothran demanded with some of his old frustration returning. If you will not rejoin regardless of what we offer, why are we here? Jake leaned forward to answer. The point is to establish what happens next. You need to understand something clearly. Earth does not need the Council anymore. We have proven that conclusively over the past few weeks. We have our own trade networks forming. We have our own defensive capabilities that match or exceed yours. We have our own diplomatic relationships developing. But we are not interested in starting an unnecessary war if one can be avoided. Admiral Ross continued the explanation. We are offering you a choice, Speaker. Reform your practices, treat all species fairly and equally, and we can coexist peacefully in the same galaxy. Continue operating the way you have been, and you will find more and more species following our example and abandoning your authority. You are threatening us, Vothran said accusingly. We are offering you reality, Lisa corrected. The galaxy is changing whether you accept it or not. Humanity just accelerated a process that was already inevitable. You can adapt and survive, or you can resist and become irrelevant. The choice is entirely yours to make. The negotiations continued for 3 full days. The discussions were sometimes heated and occasionally came close to breaking down completely, but gradually a framework emerged. The Council agreed to implement comprehensive reforms including independent oversight of all commercial activities, fair trade practices that did not discriminate based on species age or size, transparent protection services priced reasonably, and equal representation for all member species regardless of their industrial capacity or military strength. Earth signed a mutual non-aggression pact with the Council but firmly maintained its independence from Council authority. More significantly, 7 other species announced their intention to withdraw from the Council and establish their own confederation with humanity as a founding member. The new alliance would be called the Coalition of Independent Systems. 2 months after the summit concluded, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest station called Liberty Prime. The massive structure had been built in space that the Council had previously declared off limits to human construction. Now it served as headquarters for the Coalition of Independent Systems and as a symbol of what could be accomplished when species worked together as equals rather than in a hierarchy of power. Commander Ryan Blake joined him at the large viewport that showed the endless stars beyond. Strange how things change, Ryan observed. A few months ago, we were the ones being insulted and dismissed at every opportunity. Now we are helping a dozen other species learn to stand up for themselves. That is what happens when you stop being polite and start being honest. Jake replied thoughtfully. All those years of smiling while they looked down on us, we were learning everything we could. We studied their systems, identified their weaknesses, documented their corruption. When we finally stopped pretending everything was acceptable, they had absolutely no idea how to handle it. Do you think the reforms will actually last? Ryan asked. Or will the Council slowly slide back to their old ways once the immediate pressure is gone? Some of the reforms will stick because they make practical sense, Jake said. Others will require constant enforcement and vigilance. But that is not our problem anymore. We are not trying to fix the Council. We are building something better than what they had. On Earth, Admiral Catherine Ross stood before the Planetary Assembly delivering her comprehensive after-action report. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity's position in the galaxy has fundamentally changed over the past few months. We are no longer the newcomers begging for scraps from the established powers. We are now leaders of a growing alliance based on mutual respect and genuine cooperation between equals. She displayed statistics showing the dramatic increase in human trade volume, the expansion of defensive capabilities across human space, and the numerous diplomatic overtures from species who wanted to join the coalition. The numbers told a story of success that exceeded even the most optimistic projections. But I want to be absolutely clear about something important, Admiral Ross continued. We did not win this through aggression or military conquest. We won it by being better than they expected us to be, by building quietly when they thought we were weak, by gathering evidence carefully when they assumed we were ignorant, and by maintaining our principles even when it would have been much easier to sink to their level of behavior. A representative from the assembly raised her hand. Admiral, some analysts are calling this humanity's first interstellar war. Do you agree with that assessment? Ross considered the question carefully before answering. No, I do not agree. This was humanity's first real diplomatic victory. We fought when necessary, yes, but only when we had no other choice available. We showed restraint when we could have shown overwhelming dominance. And most importantly, we proved that real strength is not about how hard you can hit someone. It is about knowing when not to throw the punch in the first place. Back on Liberty Prime, Ambassador Lisa Grant recorded her final official log entry from what she called the Council period of human diplomacy. For the record, I want to note something that I believe is important for future historians to understand. When we first joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago, we came with hope and optimism. We genuinely believed in the ideals they claimed to uphold. When those ideals proved to be hollow rhetoric, we had a choice to make. We could become cynical and match their corruption, or we could maintain our principles and build something better. She paused to organize her thoughts before continuing. We chose the harder path. We endured their insults and their restrictions and their condescension. Some observers, 5 years passed since the day humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that few could have predicted. The Coalition of Independent Systems had grown from 8 founding members to 23 species, all united by principles of fair treatment and mutual respect. Trade within the coalition exceeded the economic output of the Council itself, and new species applied for membership every few months. Commodore Jake Morrison sat in his office aboard Liberty Prime, reviewing applications from 3 new species who wanted to join the coalition. His promotion had come 2 years earlier, along with increased responsibilities for managing the growing alliance. The work was challenging, but infinitely more satisfying than the old days of smiling while council members insulted him. His door chimed and Captain Ryan Blake entered carrying a data pad with an expression that suggested he was trying not to laugh. "You are going to find this interesting," Ryan said as he handed over the device. Jake took the pad and began reading. His eyes widened with genuine surprise as he processed what he was seeing. "The Galactic Council is requesting to join our alliance as an associate member." Ryan nodded with obvious amusement. Speaker Vothron's signature is right there at the bottom. "Apparently they have completed most of the reform package we demanded. They removed all the corrupt officials, including several we did not even know about. Their member species are threatening mass exodus if the Council does not align with us instead of positioning against us." Jake leaned back in his chair and laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. "The Galactic Council wants to join an alliance that was created by the species they spent 15 years treating like primitive children." "The irony is quite thick," Ryan agreed. "What do you think Ambassador Grant will decide?" Jake set down the pad and considered the question carefully. "She is probably evaluating it right now. The Council has genuinely changed from what I hear. They actually enforce their own regulations now instead of selectively applying them. Having them as associate members would bring another 100 species into our economic zone overnight. That would make the Coalition the dominant power structure in known space," Ryan observed. "Which is exactly why we need to be careful about how we handle this," Jake replied. "We built this alliance on principles rather than power. If we start acting like the old Council did, we become what we fought against." Ryan nodded in agreement. "So what do you recommend?" "Tell Ambassador Grant that I support whatever decision she makes. We created the Coalition based on fair principles, not old grudges. If the Council has genuinely reformed their practices, we should acknowledge that progress. But they get the same treatment as everyone else. No special consideration because they used to be powerful." "I will pass that along," Ryan said. He hesitated before continuing. "There is one more thing you should know. Dr. Helen Cruz sent a message from the new research station at Proxima. They finished analyzing all the Council technology we captured or traded for over the years. Turns out we are not just competitive with them anymore in terms of capabilities." Jake felt his interest spike. "How far ahead are we?" "In several critical fields we are significantly ahead. Advanced enough that 3 different Council species have formally requested technology sharing agreements. They are offering quite generous terms for access to our research." Jake smiled as he remembered all those years of being told that humanity was too primitive and too unsophisticated to contribute meaningfully to galactic civilization. Funny how perspectives change when you stop letting others define your limitations. "Indeed," Ryan agreed. "Should I prepare an official response to the Council's membership request?" "Yes," Jake said. "Tell them we will evaluate their application using the same fair and transparent process we use for every applicant. No special treatment based on their history, no exceptions to our standard requirements. They might not appreciate being treated like everyone else," Ryan pointed out. "Then they will need to get used to it quickly," Jake replied. "That is exactly how things work in our coalition. We offer courtesy and respect to everyone, but never at the cost of our fundamental principles." Ryan saluted and departed to handle the communications. Jake turned back to his viewport and watched the constant flow of ships moving through the space around Liberty Prime. Supply vessels from a dozen different species, passenger transports carrying diplomats and traders, patrol ships maintaining security, and construction craft working on the station's continuous expansion. 5 years ago, humanity had been fighting just for basic recognition. Now they were setting the standard that others tried to meet. On Earth, a ceremony was taking place at the Capitol to commemorate the 5th anniversary of independence from Council authority. Admiral Catherine Ross stood at the podium addressing a crowd of thousands while billions more watched via broadcast across human space and beyond. 5 years ago today, humanity made a choice that changed our place in the galaxy forever. We chose to stop accepting treatment that violated our dignity and our principles. Some called it reckless. Others called it the start of a war. But what it actually represented was humanity finally having the confidence to be ourselves. She paused to let her words carry across the assembled crowd. We did not become aggressive or militant. We did not seek conquest or domination. We simply stopped pretending that injustice was acceptable just because it came from established authorities. And in doing so, we discovered something important. We were not alone in our frustrations. Dozens of other species had been enduring the same treatment, waiting for someone to demonstrate that change was possible. Admiral Ross gestured to the sky, above where ships from 23 different species were performing a coordinated flight demonstration. The coalition we built together is not perfect. We still have disagreements and challenges, but it is based on something the old council forgot. Real strength comes from cooperation between equals, not domination of the weak by the powerful. Every species in our coalition has an equal voice regardless of how long they have been members or how large their military might be. She smiled at the crowd. I am often asked if I have regrets about how we handled the situation. My answer is always the same. I regret that it took us 15 years to find our courage. I regret the people who died while we waited. But I do not regret the choice we made to demand better, and I do not regret building something new instead of trying to fix something broken beyond repair. The crowd erupted in applause that lasted several minutes. When it finally quieted, Admiral Ross delivered her closing statement. To the young people watching this broadcast, remember what we learned. Being polite and courteous is a choice, not a weakness. But when politeness enables injustice, it becomes complicity. Know the difference. Stand up for your principles. And never let anyone convince you that accepting mistreatment is the same as keeping the peace. Back on Liberty Prime, Ambassador Lisa Grant was meeting with Speaker Vothron via secure holographic communication. The conversation was civil but carried the weight of their complicated history. Ambassador, Vothron began carefully. I understand you are reviewing our application for associate membership in the coalition. I want you to know that the council has changed significantly since you left. We have implemented every reform you demanded and several more that our own members requested. Lisa nodded acknowledgement. I have reviewed the documentation. The changes appear genuine and comprehensive, but you must understand our hesitation. We spent 15 years watching the council claim to uphold principles while systematically violating them. Words are easy. Consistent action over time is what matters. I understand your skepticism completely, Vothron replied. It is earned and justified. All I can offer is our commitment to continued reform and transparency. The council made terrible mistakes in how we treated newer species. We are trying to do better. Lisa considered her response carefully. The coalition will evaluate your application fairly, but I want to be clear about something. If you are accepted, you will be an associate member with no special privileges. You will follow the same rules as everyone else. Your historical position as the dominant galactic authority means nothing here. I would expect nothing less, Vothron said. That is exactly why we want to join. The coalition represents what the council should have been from the beginning. After the communication ended, Lisa sat quietly in her office reflecting on how much had changed. 5 years ago, she had been sitting in the smallest chair at council meetings, being dismissed and insulted. Now the council was asking permission to join an organization she helped create. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message from Jake. His text was brief but clear. Whatever you decide, you have my full support. We built this on principles, not revenge. Lisa smiled and began drafting her recommendation to the coalition assembly. She would recommend accepting the council as an associate member with a probationary period. They had earned a chance to prove their reforms were genuine, but they would be watched carefully and held to the same standards as everyone else. That evening, Lisa recorded one final personal log entry. History will remember this as the day the council joined the coalition. But I hope history also remembers why this moment matters. We did not defeat the council through military force. We did not destroy them out of revenge. We built so